The moment Darren Miller stepped through the front door of the mansion, he expected the usual scene. Soft lights, the faint scent of vanilla candles, and his pregnant wife waiting quietly, pretending she hadn't noticed he'd been gone longer than any business trip required. Instead, he walked into a silence so sharp it felt like stepping into a different house altogether. His suitcase slipped from his hand, landing with a dull thud against the marble floor. The Maui sun was still warm on his skin, a reminder of the week he'd spent wrapped around Zara Lane, the 26-year-old model who made him feel 20 again. He had rehearsed the story he'd tell Aubrey, something about meetings, delays, last-minute deals, lies polished enough to keep his perfect world intact. But nothing prepared him for what he found. The family portraits on the hallway wall were gone, every frame replaced with empty hooks. His office door, once always slightly open, was now locked tight with a brand new security keypad. Even the air felt different, colder, sharper, as if the house itself had expelled him. "Aubrey?" he called out, forcing his voice into a tone of bored annoyance, the one he used whenever he needed to pretend everything was under control. No answer. He walked farther in, shoes echoing across the polished floor. Then he heard its slow footsteps on the stairs. Aubrey appeared, one hand resting on her swelling stomach, the other gripping the railing for balance. But it wasn't her pregnancy that stunned him. It was her expression. A calm he had never seen on her face before. A calm that didn't look like surrender, but something far more dangerous. "What happened here?" he demanded. Aubrey met his eyes, unblinking. "Everything you thought you owned," she said softly. "You don't anymore." "Dumb?" And before Darren could speak, she added something that made the hairs on his neck stand straight. "You should sit down, Darren. What comes next will change your life." Long before the silence in the mansion warned Darren that his world had shifted, there was a different kind of silence, one that followed Aubrey Miller everywhere she went. It was the silence of a woman who'd learned to swallow disappointment so many times that her heart had forgotten how to protest. At 32, 5 months pregnant, and carrying most of the emotional weight of a marriage that never truly held her, Aubrey had mastered the art of appearing fine even when she wasn't. She hadn't always been this way. There was a time when she was vibrant, confident, designing small gardens and outdoor retreats that made clients cry with gratitude. Her work had been her pride, her identity, but when Darren said, "You don't need to exhaust yourself with these little projects anymore," she believed it was love speaking. She didn't realize he meant, "Your dreams are inconvenient for me." Still, she tried. She cooked dinners he barely commented on, attended charity events where he introduced her as "my wife, Aubrey, nothing more." And when she found out she was pregnant, she had allowed herself a moment of bliss. She pictured their baby in a warm, quiet home, pictured Darren softening, pictured them becoming a family rather than a performance. But the universe doesn't bend for wishful thinking. Instead of softening, Darren drifted farther. More late meetings, more secretive texts, more smiles meant for someone else. And Aubrey, raised by a father who believed strength meant silence, kept pretending she didn't notice. Yet, pregnancy changes a woman in ways people rarely talk about. It forces her to confront the question no one can hide from. What kind of world am I bringing my child into? And is this man capable of loving us the way we deserve? Aubrey's turning point wasn't loud. It came one morning as she stood in the kitchen, one hand on her belly, the other gripping the countertop to steady herself during a wave of dizziness. She looked at her reflection in the dark microwave door, pale skin, tired eyes, a loneliness deeper than exhaustion, and whispered, "I can't raise a child in a life where I'm invisible." It was the first truth she'd spoken aloud in years, and it was the moment something inside her began to rise slowly, quietly, but unmistakably. She didn't yet know how to fight back. She didn't yet believe she had power. But she felt a spark ignite, and once a spark appears, it will either go out or burn the whole story open. And that very afternoon, something happened that pushed her spark into a flame she could no longer hide. The truth didn't hit Aubrey all at once. It came in pieces, quiet, humiliating pieces that chipped away at her hope. It started with the unexplained late nights, the scent of a perfume, too floral to be hers on Darren's shirts, and the sudden way he guarded his phone like it held state secrets. But the moment everything snapped into clarity happened on a Wednesday morning, one she would remember like a slap she never saw coming. She was sitting at the dining table, sipping lukewarm herbal tea, trying to soothe the tightness in her chest that pregnancy sometimes brought. Her phone buzzed with a message from her friend Lily. "Are you okay? Please don't look at Instagram. Actually, look." Aubrey clicked the link. And there she was, Zara Lane, glamorous, arrogant, wrapped in a silk robe on a Maui balcony. The caption read, "Sunrise with the best company." The picture wasn't explicit, but it didn't have to be. What made Aubrey's breath vanish was the reflection in the sliding glass door behind Zara. Darren's unmistakable silhouette, his distinct watch, his hand on her waist. The comment section confirmed everything. Isn't he married? Scandal. She won. Aubrey felt something cold seep into her bones, heavier than sadness, deeper than shock. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation, served to the public like entertainment. Her husband, the man she had tried so hard to trust, had allowed the world to see her as a fool before she'd even known she was one. When Darren called hours later, pretending everything was normal, she answered with a calm she didn't recognize. She let him talk, let him lie, let him stack words like flimsy cards. What surprised her wasn't his dishonesty, it was how little power it held over her now. Because betrayal, when shoved into the light, doesn't just break a woman. Sometimes it frees her. That night, unable to sleep, Aubrey lay in bed with a hand over her stomach. "I promise," she whispered to her unborn child, "you'll never feel this kind of hurt. I won't let you grow up in a home built on lies." The next morning at the clinic, as she waited for her prenatal appointment, she overheard two women whispering about the CEO caught cheating in Maui. They didn't recognize her. That anonymity burned, but it also sharpened something inside her. She walked out of the clinic and dialed the one person she never imagined calling, Victor Hale. "Victor," she said, voice steady, "I need to understand everything Darren has kept from me." Victor exhaled slowly, as if he had expected this moment. "Aubrey," he replied, "come to my office today. There's something you need to see." And what Victor placed in front of her an hour later would shatter the last illusion she had left. Victor Hale's office overlooked the city from the 29th floor, a place where deals were written, futures were shaped, and secrets were stored in drawers cleaner than most people's consciences. Aubrey had been there only once before, years ago, when her father introduced them briefly. She remembered Victor as distant but polite. Today, as she stood in the doorway with swollen feet and a trembling heart, he looked at her with something she hadn't felt from anyone in months. Concern. "Aubrey," he said softly, gesturing her inside, "sit down. You shouldn't be on your feet too long." His voice carried the same calm authority her father once had, the kind that made people feel seen without judgment. That alone nearly made her cry. But she held her composure. For the first time in a long time, she needed to be strong not only for herself, but for the tiny heartbeat depending on her. Victor opened a folder and slid it toward her. "Before you look at this," he said, "you need to understand something. I'm not showing you this to hurt you. I'm showing you this because you deserve to know the truth." Inside were financial statements, property deeds, loan agreements. At first, she didn't understand what she was seeing. But then the signatures caught her eye. Her signature. "Victor, I never signed these." "I know," he replied. Her breath hitched. The room felt smaller. "These documents," he continued, tapping the pages, "were used as collateral for several of Darren's business expansions. Properties your mother left you, assets you inherited without even knowing. Legally, he had no right to use them." A buzzing sound filled Aubrey's ears, a dizzy fog rising through her. "He forged my name," she whispered. She wasn't asking, she was accepting. Victor nodded once, sadness flickering in his eyes. "Your mother trusted you'd one day take control of what is yours. Darren counted on you never discovering the truth." Aubrey pressed a hand to her belly. Her child kicked lightly, as if sensing her unraveling. Victor leaned closer. "Aubrey, this is not the moment to break. This is the moment to wake. You have more power than you have been allowed to believe. And if you want to protect your child, you must use it." Her throat tightened, not from fear, but from the sudden understanding that her life had never truly been hers. She closed the folder, fingers trembling yet decisive. "Victor," she said quietly, "tell me what I need to do." Victor hesitated, studying her expression as if confirming she was ready. Then he opened another drawer. Inside was a document that made her breath stop cold. "Before we go any further," Victor murmured. You need to see this. If you been to our impression. While Aubrey sat in Victor Hale's office, discovering the truth that would burn through the foundation of her marriage, Darren Miller was waking up in Maui without a worry in the world. The sun streamed through the glass walls of the oceanside villa he had rented $4,800 a night, charged to a corporate card he wasn't supposed to touch. Waves crashed against black lava rocks outside. Palm trees swayed lazily. It was the kind of paradise people flew across the world to taste. And Darren believed he deserved all of it. He stretched in the bed, sheets still warm, Zara Lane curled beside him like a postcard fantasy. She looked radiant in the morning light, the kind of beauty that made men forget logic, morals, and consequences. Zara wasn't shy about her desires, money, exposure, a lifestyle that sparkled. Darren loved the way she made him feel powerful, young, unburdened. You should just leave her, Zara murmured, tracing circles on his chest. You're wasting your time with that quiet little housewife life. You and I, we could rule everything. He smirked. You don't know Aubrey. She wouldn't survive a day without me. Zara rolled her eyes. Please. She looks fragile enough to fold in half. Women like that don't fight back. Those words fed Darren's ego like gasoline on a flame. He didn't know that at that exact moment, his fragile wife was sitting across from Victor, uncovering financial crimes that could ruin him. Zara climbed out of bed, slipped into a silk robe, and posed on the balcony for her next Instagram story. Smile, she said. The world loves a man who looks like he has everything. Darren stepped behind her, letting the camera catch his reflection just enough to stir attention, but not enough to confirm anything. He loved the thrill of being noticed, admired, envied. He didn't notice the small detail in the background, the open folder of documents he'd carelessly tossed into his suitcase before leaving home. Papers containing forged signatures. Illegal transfers, evidence of everything he'd been hiding. Zara did notice. She peeked at them while pretending to adjust her robe. For a moment, her eyes glinted with something predatory, curiosity, calculation, but she said nothing. Later that night, as they sat at a beachside restaurant under strings of golden lights, Zara leaned in close and whispered, Darren, do you trust me? He didn't hesitate. Of course. Zara smiled sweetly, almost innocently. But her fingers tapped her phone under the table, 3 quick taps, the sign she used when she found something she could use. And in that moment, Zara made a silent decision, one that would soon destroy the man sitting across from her. The night after meeting with Victor, Aubrey lay awake in the dim glow of the bedside lamp. Sleep refused to come. Her mind spun with numbers, forged signatures, and the sound of Victor saying, You have more power than you know. But power felt like a foreign language to her, one she had never been allowed to speak. She shifted slowly, hand resting on her belly. The baby kicked gentle, rhythmic. A reminder that she wasn't alone. And yet the loneliness hit her harder than ever. Darren was still in Maui, still lying, still parading his betrayal under a tropical sun while she struggled to breathe under the weight of the truth. Around 2 a.m., a stabbing pain shot across her abdomen, not sharp enough to be dangerous, but enough to steal her breath. Pregnancy had never been easy for her. High blood pressure, dizziness, nights where she felt the room spin. Her doctor warned her repeatedly. Stress can harm both you and the baby. You need stability, Aubrey. Thanks for watching. If for all discreened, but how could she find stability when the man she trusted most had ripped it out from under her? She pushed herself upright, legs trembling. She walked to the bathroom and splashed cool water on her face. Her reflection stared back, pale, tired, a ghost of the woman she used to be. For a moment, tears pooled, the kind that burned before they fell. Then something unexpected happened. She didn't cry. Instead, she felt a slow, rising heat in her chest, not despair, not panic, but anger. Pure, clean anger. The kind that didn't destroy, but clarified. The kind that came from realizing she'd been protecting a man who never protected her. A man who gambled her inheritance. A man who risked her future and their child's future for an affair that meant nothing. She whispered into the quiet room. I'm done waiting for him to love me. Her phone buzzed suddenly, making her jump. A notification. At first, she thought it was from the prenatal app she used. But no, this was a message from someone she never expected. Zara Lane. A single line. You should know what he's doing right now. Attached was a photo. Aubrey's hands shook as she opened it. The image loaded slowly. Darren at a Maui bar, his arm around Zara, kissing her neck. But that wasn't the part that made Aubrey's heart stop. It was the folder on the table beside him. Her mother's documents. The same ones Victor had shown her. Zara had taken the photo intentionally. To provoke her. To warn her. Or to destroy her. Aubrey closed her eyes, steadying her breath. And in that moment, she realized Zara's message wasn't the attack Darren feared. It was the beginning of a war he couldn't possibly win. The next morning, Aubrey walked into Victor Hale's office with a steadiness she didn't fully feel. Her night had been long, sleepless, and haunted by Zara's provocative photo, but it had also given her clarity. Betrayal wasn't just a wound, now it was motivation. Victor looked up the moment she entered. "You shouldn't be moving around so much," he said, concern etched across his features. "I'm fine," she replied, lowering herself into the chair with slow, careful movements. "We need to talk next steps." For a moment, Victor simply studied her, as if seeing a different woman from the one who had sat trembling before him 2 days ago. "All right," he said at last, sliding a stack of documents toward her. "Then let's begin." And Telfis. The plan unfolded piece by piece, each detail more shocking than the last. Darren had used her inheritance to secure several major loans. Loans he would default on if those properties were reclaimed. Legally, Aubrey had the right to pull every one of them back. It wouldn't just inconvenience him, it would destabilize his entire empire. But that wasn't the part that stunned her. Victor revealed a second folder. Inside were emails between Darren and his financial advisor, discussing contingency plans for after the assumed divorce plans that included moving large amounts of money into offshore accounts, leaving Aubrey with nothing but a polite settlement. He planned to walk away, Victor said softly, and take everything. Aubrey inhaled sharply, hand instinctively moving to her stomach. She felt the baby flutter, a small reminder of the life she had to protect. "He really thought I wouldn't find out," she whispered. "He counted on you never fighting back," Victor added. There was silence, thick, electric, decisive. Aubrey straightened her shoulders. "Then let's show him he was wrong." Victor nodded, admiration flickering across his features. "We'll file the petition to reclaim your inheritance under emergency protection. Once approved, Darren will lose access to every asset tied to your name." "And the house?" she asked quietly. "That too. Go I. I would have why. Go I would have whined." Aubrey closed her eyes for a moment. She had built memories in that house, but she could no longer let sentiment shackle her future. When she opened her eyes again, they held something new. Resolve, fire. A version of herself she didn't recognize but desperately needed. Victor leaned forward. "This will hit him harder than anything else. Are you ready for that?" Aubrey exhaled slowly. "I'm ready for the truth, whatever it brings. If you compound scase of dough." Victor slid one last document across the table for her to sign. But just as Aubrey picked up the pen, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression changed instantly. "Aubrey," he murmured. "What is it?" Victor swallowed, eyes narrowing. "Darren just found out. And he's on the next flight home." Aubrey's hands trembled slightly as she stared at the final document Victor had placed before her. It was deceptively simple, just a few paragraphs, a few legal terms, a signature line. Nothing about it hinted at the earthquake it was about to unleash. Yet she knew the moment she signed, nothing in her life would ever return to the version she once knew. Her mother's name was printed at the top. Seeing it again made Aubrey's throat tighten. The woman she'd lost years ago was still protecting her, even from beyond the grave. It felt like a hand gently resting on her shoulder, urging her forward. "You don't have to rush," Victor said, though his eyes carried urgency. "But this is the safest way to shield your assets before Darren attempts to move anything." Aubrey inhaled slowly. "He's always been ahead of me," she murmured, "always moving faster, talking louder, making me feel like I was chasing him." Victor's expression softened. "Not anymore." She picked up the pen. It felt strangely heavy, like it carried the weight of all the choices she had postponed, all the warnings she had ignored, all the years she spent convincing herself she wasn't worthy of more. She thought of the nights she waited for Darren to come home, the whispered excuses, the moments she questioned her own intuition, the way he diminished her dreams until she nearly forgot she had any. It all led here. She lowered the pen and signed her name, Aubrey Miller. Her signature looked different, sharper, more certain, as if even the ink understood she was done living quietly. Victor released a breath he'd been holding. "It's official," he said. "You've taken back everything he stole." For a moment, Aubrey felt light. Not joyful, no, not yet, but unburdened, as if something tight around her ribs had finally loosened. "I should feel scared," she admitted softly. "Strength can look a lot like fear at first," Victor replied. "You'll get used to it. It's machinal." She managed a faint smile. Her hand drifted to her belly, feeling another small kick. "I'm doing this for both of us," she whispered. Before Victor could respond, his assistant burst into the office without knocking. A woman, usually calm, composed, and borderline unshakable. Today she looked pale. "Mr. Hale," she said, voice trembling, "you need to see this." Victor moved to the computer as the assistant pulled up a news alert. Aubrey watched his face shift from confusion to concern, to something much darker. He turned slowly toward her. "Aubrey," he said carefully, "you're not the only one making moves today." She frowned. "What do you mean?" Victor hesitated. "Darren just filed an emergency petition of his own, and he's accusing you of fraud. The flight from Maui to Manhattan landed 15 minutes early, and Darren Miller stormed through the airport like a man whose throne had been stolen. He ignored Zara's frantic texts, ignored his assistant's warnings, ignored the anxious voicemail from his financial advisor. All he cared about was getting home and confronting the woman he believed he still controlled. Anger pulsed through him as he sped along the highway, the city skyline rising like steel teeth ahead. How dare Aubrey freeze his accounts? How dare she tamper with properties he built, at least in his mind, with his own hands? How dare she embarrass him? By the time he pulled into the driveway, rage had crystallized into something sharper. Entitlement. He slammed the car door and stormed inside. The house didn't greet him. It stared back, cold and stripped of warmth. Picture frames gone, drawers emptied, locks changed. The silence was nothing like the peaceful quiet he once dismissed. It was heavy, deliberate, hostile. "Aubrey." His voice cracked through the space. No answer. He moved faster, throwing open doors, slamming cabinets, flipping light switches. Every room felt foreign, like a museum exhibit of a life he used to own. Upstairs, he heard faint movement. He followed the sound and found Aubrey standing near the bedroom window, one hand on her belly, the other holding a stack of papers. She looked calm, too calm. "What the hell did you do?" he demanded. She turned slowly. "I protected myself. You stole from me. You forged my signature," she said, her tone steady, almost eerily controlled. "Everything I did today was legal. Everything you did for the past year wasn't." Darren's face twisted. "You think anyone will believe you? I'm the one with power here, Aubrey, not you." She didn't flinch. Not anymore. For a moment, Darren's confidence wavered. Just a flicker. But it was enough to show the truth. He wasn't angry because Aubrey fought back. He was terrified because she finally could. "You filed a fraud petition against me?" she asked quietly. He smirked. "Of course, and the courts will side with me. They always do." Aubrey took a step closer, her breathing steady. "I don't think you understand how much trouble you're in." Darren scoffed. "The only trouble I see is you making a fool of yourself. And trust me, sweetheart, when this is over, you'll crawl back begging for my help." Aubrey looked at him then, really looked. And for the first time in their marriage, she saw a small man hiding behind a large shadow. She placed the papers on the table beside him. "Read those," she said softly, "then tell me again what you think the court will do." Darren grabbed the top document, irritation etched into every movement until his eyes scanned the first lines. His face drained of color, because what he held in his hands was a legal notice that could dismantle his entire empire overnight. Darren's eyes raced across the legal notice, his breathing turning shallow as he realized what he was holding. The document was a formal declaration of asset reclamation, signed, sealed, filed, and fully enforceable. Every property tied to Aubrey's inheritance was now legally removed from his control. His loans would collapse, his liquidity would crash, and every investor who'd once praised him would soon call for his head. This is impossible, he stammered. It's the law, Aubrey said quietly. You broke it, I didn't. He looked up at her with a mixture of fury and disbelief. You would ruin me? After everything I've given you? A sob of bitter amusement escaped her. Given me? You took from me, Darren. You took my mother's legacy. You took my trust. You even tried to take the future of our child, Esphorus. He opened his mouth to protest, but no words came. There was nothing to defend. Aubrey continued, her voice trembling but unwavering. You thought I wouldn't fight because I've always been quiet. But you never understood something. She placed a hand over her belly. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's survival. For a moment, Darren stood frozen. Then, as if desperate to reclaim control, he snatched the remaining papers on the table, financial breakdowns, forged signature evidence, loan defaults, and tore them open one by one. His jaw clenched. His eyes widened further with each page. This is going to leak, he whispered. Someone will leak this. My board will see it. They already have, Aubrey said softly. He spun toward her. What? She swallowed. Victor contacted them this morning. They know about the forged signatures, about the illegal collateral, about your misuse of company funds. For the first time, Darren looked afraid, not angry, not arrogant, but genuinely shaken. No, he said. No, they can't. They can, Aubrey replied, and they will. His phone began vibrating uncontrollably on the nightstand, call after call from his investors, his CFO, his legal counsel. Darren stared at it, unable to pick up, unable to breathe. This isn't happening, he muttered. This isn't. It is, Aubrey said gently, and it's happening because of your choices, not mine. He stared at her with a hollow, haunted expression, as though seeing her for the first time, not as the compliant wife he'd shaped, but as a woman he had vastly underestimated. You think you've won? He said weakly. Aubrey held his gaze. No, Darren, I think I've finally stopped losing. Before he could respond, a loud knock echoed through the house. Darren flinched. Aubrey stepped back. The knocking grew harder. Darren whispered, "Who is that?" And when the voice on the other side shouted its answer, Darren felt his entire world split open. The pounding at the door continued, echoing through the house like a warning bell. But before Aubrey could even process what was happening, her mind did something unexpected. It drifted backward, straight into the years she had spent swallowing pain in the very walls, now shaking under the force of someone demanding entry. It was strange how trauma worked. Sometimes it didn't appear in the moment of crisis, but in the moments right before truth arrived. She remembered her first year of marriage, back when she still believed love meant enduring. Darren would come home late, claiming he was building their future, and she would reheat dinner 3 times, praying he'd walk through the door, smiling. When he finally arrived, irritated and exhausted, he'd push her cooking away and say, "You should have known I'd already eaten." She remembered how she stopped setting the table after that. She remembered planning a small getaway for their anniversary, a quiet cabin, a lake, something simple but meaningful. Darren canceled the night before, claiming an urgent meeting. She later learned he had gone out with colleagues for drinks at a Michelin-star restaurant she'd always wanted to try. He never apologized. He laughed it off. "You're too sensitive." She remembered the first time she told him she wanted children. He had kissed her forehead, said yes, then made excuses for 2 years until she stopped asking. She remembered how he mocked her work, called her passion projects cute little hobbies, how he encouraged her to quit, how he reshaped her life into one that revolved around him while he revolved around no one. And most painfully, she remembered the night she told him she was pregnant. She had imagined him lifting her off the floor, spinning her around, crying tears of joy. Instead, he merely nodded and said, "We'll make it work," as if she had informed him the dishwasher was broken. That was when she learned excitement could die in silence. All those moments, all those small deaths had built the foundation for this very day. And now, as the pounding at the door grew louder, Aubrey felt something she hadn't felt in years. Courage? Darren, however, felt something else entirely. Panic. Pure, unfiltered. It vibrated through him with every knock. "Are you going to open it?" Aubrey asked quietly. He didn't answer. His breathing quickened. His eyes darted around as if looking for a place to run. The pounding stopped. Silence. Then a voice shouted through the door, strong and authoritative. "Darren Miller, open the door. We have a warrant." Aubrey's heart pounded once, just once, before settling into a calm she didn't recognize. Darren stepped back, shaking. And when the door finally swung open, the person standing there wasn't just there for Darren. They were there with news that would change everything for Aubrey too. The doorway flooded with harsh morning light as two federal officers stepped inside. Darren stumbled backward, his bravado evaporating as fast as his color. The lead officer, a tall man with a clipped tone, held out a stack of documents. "Mr. Miller, we need to speak with you regarding financial misconduct, forged documents, and misuse of secured assets. You're not under arrest yet, but you are required to come with us for questioning." Darren choked on his words. "This is a misunderstanding. My attorney, my board, they'll handle this." The officer didn't blink. "Your board is the one who asked us to intervene." Aubrey watched the scene unfold with an eerie calm. The chaos felt distant, almost muted, as if she were standing behind glass. Maybe it was shock, or maybe it was something else, a strange sense of closure brushing the edges of her fear. "Is this because of her?" Darren snapped suddenly, pointing at Aubrey. "She's trying to destroy me. You have no idea who she is. She's lying. She's manipulating." The officer cut him off. "We reviewed the documents. The signatures you used are inconsistent with Mrs. Miller's confirmed records. We have handwriting analysts, notarization logs, timestamps. Mr. Miller, this is serious." Darren's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Aubrey couldn't help noticing the irony. After years of shouting over her voice, Darren now had nothing to say. Her hand drifted to her stomach, soothing the baby who seemed to shift anxiously beneath her ribs. She whispered internally, "We're okay. You're safe." For the first time, she truly believed it. "Mrs. Miller," the second officer said gently, turning to her, "we also need to ask you a few questions. Not as a suspect, please understand that, but as someone whose assets were misused. You're the primary victim in this investigation." The word victim stung, but not in the way she expected. It didn't make her feel weak. It made her feel seen. "I'll cooperate," Aubrey said quietly. "Whatever you need." "Yes, Darren's expression hardened, desperation melting into bitterness. "You think this makes you strong?" he hissed. "You think they care about you? When this blows over, you'll come crawling back." Aubrey met his eyes, and for the first time, she didn't look away. "I'm not crawling anymore," she said. The officers signaled Darren to follow them outside. He hesitated, turning back one last time as if expecting Aubrey to beg him to stay. She didn't. As he stepped through the door, the officer handed Aubrey an envelope. "This was sent to our office for you this morning. We were instructed to deliver it personally." Aubrey frowned. "From who?" "We don't know. No return address. But it's marked urgent." She held the envelope, feeling the weight of it, sensing it wasn't ordinary paper. She slowly slid her finger under the seal, and when she saw the first line inside, her knees nearly gave out. The envelope trembled slightly in Aubrey's hands. Something about it felt familiar, the faint lavender scent, the careful handwriting, the soft paper. Her breath caught as she pulled out the single sheet inside. It wasn't printed. It was written, by hand, and signed by a name she hadn't seen in over 20 years. Her mother. Aubrey's vision blurred as she sank into the nearest chair. She blinked hard, forcing herself to focus. The letter began simply, "My darling Aubrey, if you are reading this, it means trouble has found you, and I am no longer there to guide you, but I have prepared for this moment more than you know." Her throat closed. She could almost hear her mother's gentle voice speaking every word. The letter continued, "You have inherited more than assets. You inherited enemies, people who want what does not belong to them. Your father and I tried to protect you from that truth. If someone you love ever betrays you, go to Victor Hale. He knows everything. He promised me he would keep you safe. Trust him, even when you cannot trust yourself." Aubrey felt her breath leave her chest. Her mother had known. Somehow, she had predicted not just danger, but Darren. She kept reading. "There is a file locked in Victor's safe. Inside it is the full record of your inheritance, including property rights, dormant accounts, and shares in a company you never knew existed. They belong to you alone. Not your husband, not anyone else." Aubrey pressed a shaking hand to her stomach. Her mother's words wrapped around her like armor, warm, steady, irrefutable. The letter darkened in tone near the end. If someone tries to control you, diminish you, or take from you, remember this. A woman who has lost everything is a woman who can do anything. Stand your ground, my brave girl. You will survive, you will rise, and you will never be alone. A tear slipped down Aubrey's cheek. She hadn't cried in weeks, but this was different. This wasn't grief, it was release. She folded the letter carefully, almost reverently, and placed a hand over it. A connection across time. A reminder she wasn't as lost as she believed. Just then, Victor burst through the front door, breathless. "Aubrey, are you okay?" She stood, clutching the letter. "My mother, she prepared for all of this." Victor froze. His expression shifted not to surprise, but to something closer to awe. "Yes," he whispered. "She did." Aubrey steadied herself. "Victor, what's in the file she mentioned? The one in your safe?" Victor's jaw tightened. He hesitated. "Aubrey, that file changes everything." She swallowed. "Show me." Victor shook his head. "I will, but first." He stepped aside, and the person who walked in behind him made Aubrey's entire world tilt on its axis. Aubrey's breath caught the moment she saw who stood behind Victor. It wasn't another officer. It wasn't a lawyer. It was someone she hadn't expected to face this soon. Darren's former CFO, Gregory Hayes. A man Darren trusted with everything. A man who now looked like he hadn't slept in days. He stepped forward cautiously, holding a thick folder. "Mrs. Miller, Aubrey, we need to talk." Aubrey stiffened, unsure whether this was another trap. But Victor nodded at her gently. "He's on our side now." Gregory exhaled shakily. "I'm done protecting him. Your husband crossed lines even I didn't know existed." He handed the folder to her. Inside were spreadsheets, emails, and transaction logs, each one revealing deeper misconduct. Offshore accounts, unreported income, fraudulent loans, and worst of all, a quiet attempt to transfer one of Aubrey's inherited properties to Zara Lane. Her heart pounded. "He tried to give her my mother's land?" Gregory shook his head. "No. He tried to sell it. Zara refused. That girl, she's more cunning than he realized. She's been gathering evidence on him for months." Aubrey blinked. "Why?" "To protect herself," Gregory replied. "She never planned to stay with him long term. But she also knew Darren was dangerous when cornered." Aubrey's mind reeled. Zara, her tormentor, had unintentionally become part of the downfall. Gregory continued, lowering his voice. "But there's something else. Something you need before this goes public." He pulled out a small USB drive. "The board received this anonymously last night," he said. "It contains audio recordings of Darren admitting to forging your signature. And other things." Aubrey looked at him sharply. "Other things?" Gregory nodded grimly. "Threats. Plans to discredit you, to take full custody if you tried to leave, to paint you as unstable during pregnancy." Her stomach twisted. She felt her baby shift, as if responding to her fear. Victor placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "This is more than enough to protect you." But Gregory wasn't done. "There's one last thing," he said, voice trembling. "Something I think you should hear." He pulled out his phone, scrolled, and pressed play. Darren's voice filled the room, cold, cruel, unmistakably him. "I built everything. She's nothing without me. Once the baby's born, I'll make sure she has no rights. She should be grateful. I don't throw her out sooner." Aubrey felt a cold tear slide down her cheek. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't shock. It was the death of any remaining guilt she had for destroying the man who had destroyed her piece by piece. She inhaled deeply, letting the truth settle into her bones. "Thank you," she whispered. Gregory nodded, relieved. "There's more, and it's time you hear it." But before he could reveal the rest, Victor's phone rang sharply. He answered. His face changed instantly. He turned to Aubrey. "It's the board. They've taken action. And Darren, he just lost everything." The news hit Darren like a physical blow. Board vote, unanimously passed. Emergency removal, effective immediately. CEO position, terminated. All access, revoked. The empire he'd built on charm, manipulation, and borrowed resources collapsed faster than he ever believed possible. His phone vibrated non-stop, angry investors, abandoned business partners, reporters sniffing blood. But none of it mattered now. The power that once cushioned his arrogance had vanished in a single morning. And all he could think about was Aubrey. Meanwhile, across the city, Aubrey stood in Victor's office, reviewing the aftermath with a quiet strength that felt new, but also strangely familiar. Almost as if this version of herself had always been there, patiently waiting beneath years of silence. Victor placed a set of documents before her. "These are the properties officially reinstated under your name," he said. "Your mother left you far more than you knew." Aubrey touched the first page. "I didn't think I'd ever own anything truly mine." "You've always owned more than he did," Victor replied gently. "He just convinced you otherwise." End quote. His words struck something deep inside her, an ache of realization, but also pride. She wasn't powerless. She had been misled, diminished, deliberately kept small. Not anymore. She straightened, inhaling slowly. Her baby kicked, as if agreeing. "I want to secure everything," she said. "Not out of revenge. For my child?" Victor nodded. "We'll set up a trust. Only you will have access." As they worked, Gregory entered again, carrying another file. "There's one more thing," he said carefully. "Something I found while reviewing the offshore accounts." Aubrey braced herself. What did he hide now? Gregory opened the folder. Inside were several receipts, all with large payments. "Life insurance policies," Gregory explained. "Several of them, and all of them list you and the baby as beneficiaries." Aubrey blinked. "I don't understand. Why would he?" Victor's expression darkened. "Because Darren expected to keep control. If anything ever happened to him, he wanted the appearance of being a provider." Aubrey felt a strange mixture of nausea and sorrow, not for Darren, but for the delusion he lived in. A man who couldn't love her had still wanted credit for supporting her after his death. A hollow kind of kindness. A selfish version of generosity. Gregory continued. "Legally, these policies are yours now. He cannot cancel them." Aubrey didn't smile, but she did feel something shift, a small piece of security settling into place. Gregory hesitated, then added, "There's one more file. It's personal." Aubrey swallowed. "Show me." Gregory laid a thin envelope on the table. Victor frowned. "This wasn't in the original audit." Gregory shook his head. "Because it wasn't in the company records. It was in Darren's private safe." Aubrey opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a photograph. Her mother, standing beside a man Aubrey had never seen. And on the back, a message in her mother's handwriting. He must never know the truth. Aubrey's heart lurched. And for the first time, she realized Darren might not be the only man who had betrayed her. 2 weeks later, Manhattan buzzed with anticipation for the annual Winter Founders Gala, a night where power gathered under crystal chandeliers, where fortunes shifted with a handshake, and where reputation mattered more than truth. It was the last place Aubrey expected to be, yet here she was, stepping out of a black car in a gown the color of midnight, her pregnancy visible but elegant, her chin lifted in quiet defiance. She didn't come to impress. She came to reclaim. Victor had insisted she attend. "Let them see you standing," he said. "Let them see who truly built the empire he pretended to own." Inside the ballroom, murmurs rippled as heads turned toward her. Some whispered out of curiosity, others out of pity. None knew the full story yet, but they would. Tonight, the board was preparing a public statement about Darren's removal. Tonight, Aubrey would no longer be the invisible wife in the corner. She felt her baby kick lightly, as though offering encouragement. "We're okay," she whispered. "This is our beginning." Across the room, Gregory approached, looking nervous. "Aubrey, there's something I need to prepare you for. If interest rhyme." But before he could finish, a hush fell over the crowd. Darren had arrived. He looked nothing like the polished CEO he once was. His suit was wrinkled, his expression frantic, his confidence shattered. When his eyes locked onto Aubrey, something inside him snapped. He stormed toward her, ignoring the stares, ignoring the board members whispering behind raised glasses. "What are you doing here?" he hissed. "This is my world." "Not anymore," Aubrey replied calmly. "You're not ruining my name publicly," he snarled. "You ruined it yourself." Darren stepped closer, rage twisting his features. "You think you can take everything from me? You think you can walk in here and act like you're better than me?" Aubrey held his gaze. "I don't need to act." The room watched in stunned silence. Then, over the microphone, the chairman of the board cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "tonight we formally address the leadership transition at Miller Development." Darren lunged for the stage, panic overtaking him. Security moved instantly, but he shouted one last sentence before being pulled back. "She's lying. All of this, she planned it." Aubrey didn't move. She didn't need to. Truth didn't require volume. The chairman continued. "The evidence against Mr. Miller includes financial forgery, misappropriation of assets, and attempts to defraud shareholders. Effective immediately, his ownership is revoked." Gasps filled the room. Cameras flashed. Darren crumpled. But the chairman wasn't done. "And the controlling stake of the company will be transferred to its rightful inheritor." Aubrey froze. "Rightful inheritor?" She looked to Victor, confused. He nodded solemnly. "Aubrey," he whispered, "your mother founded the company. What if Wendy's and if Ewell?" Aubrey felt the room tilt as the chairman's words echoed through the ballroom. Founded by her mother? The world around her blurred crystal chandeliers, murmuring guests, Darren thrashing weakly against security guards. It all dissolved into a dull hum. Only one thought pulsed in her mind. "My mother built Miller Development?" Victor stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Your mother wasn't just an investor, Aubrey. She was the architect of everything Darren pretended to create." "I'm sevened." Aubrey gripped the edge of a nearby table, her breath catching. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Victor exhaled. "She wanted to raise you without the weight of a corporate empire on your shoulders. She believed you should choose your future freely. She planned to reveal everything when you turned 30, but she died too soon." Aubrey felt tears burning at the edges of her vision, not from sadness, but from revelation. Her entire life, she thought she had inherited fragments, land, savings, a few assets. But her mother had left her an empire disguised as shadows. Gregory stepped forward, nodding somberly. "The offshore accounts Darren used? Many originated from your mother's initial funding. His entire rise was built on her foundation." "And he didn't know?" Aubrey whispered. "He knew she invested," Victor said. "But he didn't know she retained controlling shares transferred to you automatically upon her death." Aubrey stared at the stage where the chairman continued announcing the transition. The audience was in an uproar. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras flashed like lightning across a dark sky. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a breath. Victor's expression softened in a way she had never seen before. "Because your mother asked me to wait until you were strong enough to carry it, until you learned your own worth." She felt her baby kick a small affirmation, a reminder of why she had kept fighting. Darren, still half restrained, shouted hoarsely, "Lies, all of it. She doesn't deserve anything." Aubrey turned toward him slowly. "No," she said calmly. "I deserve everything she entrusted to me. Everything you stole. Everything you tried to destroy." And in fact, for the first time, Darren stopped fighting. His face paled, his knees buckled. The truth wasn't just humiliating, it was fatal to his ego. Aubrey stepped forward, the crowd parting instinctively. She didn't speak loudly, she didn't need to. "My mother built the world you tried to take from me, and now I'm taking it back." Gasps rippled across the room. Reporters shouted her name. The chairman held out a leather folder. "Mrs. Miller," he announced, "these are the documents confirming your new position as majority owner." Her hands trembled as she reached for them. But before she could touch the folder, someone at the ballroom entrance called her name. She turned, and standing there was a face she never expected to see again, holding a truth that could rewrite everything she thought she knew. Aubrey froze, her hands still hovering above the ownership folder, as the crowd turned to see who had spoken her name. Standing in the doorway, illuminated by the chandelier's glow, was a man she hadn't seen since childhood, her mother's former business partner, Elias Ward. He looked older now, his once dark hair streaked with silver, but his eyes carried the same steady warmth she remembered. Elias stepped forward, the crowd parting instinctively, whispering as though they were witnessing something sacred. "Aubrey," he said gently, "your mother asked me to come to you when the time was right. And tonight, it is." Aubrey felt her breath catch, her heart pounding. "You knew her secret?" she asked. "I knew all of them," Elias replied, "and I swore to protect you if the world ever tried to take what she built." Darren, still held by security, let out a weak, bitter laugh. "More lies, more conspiracies. You people are insane." Elias didn't even look at him. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope, old, worn, and unmistakably written in her mother's elegant script. "For you," he said, "your mother left this to be delivered only when your inheritance was threatened." Aubrey took the envelope with trembling hands. Before she could open it, Elias continued, "Your mother wasn't just the founder. She built the company on principles Darren never understood. Integrity, fairness, vision. She always believed you would carry those principles farther than she could." The ballroom murmured, drinks untouched, eyes fixed on her. Aubrey swallowed hard. "Why now? Why tonight?" "Because Darren isn't just losing his power," Elias said quietly. "He's losing the lies that kept him safe. And you deserve to see the full truth before you step into what is rightfully yours." Aubrey felt emotion rise like a tide. Her mother had planned everything, every protection, every secret, every safeguard, anticipating the very betrayal she now stood inside. Darren finally snapped, lunging forward despite the grip of security. "This is my company, my legacy. She doesn't have the strength to run anything." Aubrey turned to him, her voice calm but edged with steel. "It was never yours. You lived in a house my mother built. You climbed a ladder she designed. You controlled a company she created. And all you ever did was try to bury the woman who gave you the foundation." Her words hit harder than any public statement. Darren's knees buckled. He sagged in the arms of security, the last fragments of his ego collapsing. Elias stepped closer to Aubrey. "There's one more truth about your mother, something you must know before you take the mantle." Aubrey looked up sharply. "What truth?" Elias hesitated just long enough to make the room lean in. Then he whispered, "Your mother didn't just build the company. She didn't do it alone. And the man who helped her? He was closer to you than you ever realized." Aubrey felt the air thicken around her as the ballroom quieted, waiting for Elias to reveal the truth he had carried for decades. Darren's furious breathing echoed faintly behind her, but she didn't look back. For the first time in her life, she faced forward toward answers, not excuses. "Say it," she whispered. Elias's eyes softened with something she didn't expect: remorse. "Your mother didn't build the company alone," he began. "The man who helped her create Miller Development was someone she trusted more than anyone, someone who wanted to remain invisible." "Who?" Aubrey pressed. Elias took a breath. "Your father." The room stilled. Even the clinking glasses seemed to halt mid-air. Aubrey shook her head instinctively. "No, my father was a military man." "He wasn't?" "He was more than that," Elias said gently. "Your parents built the company before you were born. They intended to raise you into it. But after your mother died, your father panicked. He didn't know how to protect you and the company from corporate predators. So he walked away from it all, gave operational power to your mother's partners, including me, and disappeared from the business world entirely." Aubrey felt the ground shift beneath her. "All these years," Elias continued, "we protected the truth so you could live without a target on your back. But when you turned 18, your father wanted to tell you. Then you married Darren, and he didn't trust your husband. He feared Darren would exploit your inheritance." Her breath trembled. He was right. Elias nodded sadly. He knew Darren's type: desperate men masquerading as powerful ones. End quote. Aubrey felt a wave of grief for a past she never understood, for a father who had loved her by hiding everything. But there was more. Elias handed her the leather ownership folder the board had prepared. "You're not just the majority owner," he said softly. "You are the rightful heir. This company was always meant to be yours." Aubrey touched the folder with reverent hands. Her mother's legacy, her father's protection, her own strength forged in silence. She was no longer a woman fighting to survive. She was the woman her parents raised her to be. Across the ballroom, Darren let out a strangled cry. "She can't run it. She's pregnant. She's weak." Aubrey turned toward him slowly. "No," she said. "I'm the strongest I've ever been. And this child will be raised in a world of truth, not the lies you built your life on." Security began escorting Darren out, his protests fading into pathetic echoes. Elias stepped beside her. "One more thing, Aubrey. Your father, he left something else, something important, something meant for today." She looked at him, heart pounding. "What did he leave?" Elias gestured toward the ballroom entrance. And as the crowd turned, a man stepped inside, holding a letter addressed to her in her father's handwriting. The man standing at the entrance looked older, gentler, but unmistakably familiar. Aubrey felt her breath hitch as he approached, the ballroom fading into a distant hum. In his hands was a sealed envelope with her name written in her father's handwriting. Strong, steady, the way she remembered it before grief carved lines into him. He stopped in front of her, emotion tightening his voice. Your mother wanted you to have this only when you were ready to carry the family legacy. And tonight, you proved you are. Aubrey opened the letter slowly. Her father's words poured out, simple yet powerful. My sweet girl, if you are reading this, you have survived what I feared most, the cruelty of those who mistake kindness for weakness. Never forget your mother built an empire, but you were always meant to lead it. Build it your way. Lead with heart, not fear. And love, when love finds you again, let it. A single tear fell, not from pain, but from understanding. Everything she thought she lost, her identity, her power, her place in the world, had been waiting for her all along. Behind her, the crowd erupted in whispers as the board officially announced her as the new head of Miller Development. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted her name, investors lined up to shake her hand. She was no longer Darren's wife. She was Aubrey Miller, daughter of visionaries. She was the heir. She was the leader her mother always believed she would become. Across the room, Darren was escorted out the back, stripped of his power, his status, his pride. His downfall wasn't dramatic, it was silent, almost pathetic. The world he once controlled had forgotten him in a single night. His final words echoed behind him like a ghost. She'll never replace me. But the truth was simple. She already had. Later that evening, after the gala dimmed and the crowd thinned, Aubrey stepped onto the balcony overlooking Manhattan. The baby shifted gently inside her, as if feeling the shift in destiny. A warm voice broke the quiet. You handled tonight with more strength than most CEOs I've ever met. She turned to see Ethan Ward, gentle, steady, reliable Ethan standing beside her with a soft smile. Your father asked me to keep an eye on you these last few years, he admitted. I wasn't supposed to interfere, but somewhere along the way, I started caring on my own. Aubrey felt warmth bloom in her chest. Are you saying you want to be part of this new life? She asked softly. Only if you want that too, he replied. She placed a hand over her heart, then over her belly. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. Finally, she whispered, yes. Ethan's smile widened as he took her hand gently, respectfully. And in that quiet moment, over city lights and a future wide open, Aubrey felt the story close. Not with loss, not with revenge, but with truth, love, and a legacy reclaimed. And deep inside, her baby kicked as if offering the final confirmation that they were exactly where they were meant to be. So that's it. Our story closes here. And if you're still here with us, watching or listening all the way to this moment, then maybe something in Aubrey's journey touched your heart in a quiet, personal way. You know, life doesn't always break loudly. Sometimes it breaks in silence, the way hers did. And healing often begins the same way. There's a line from Marcus Aurelius that kept coming to my mind as we built this story. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Aubrey didn't win because the world became kinder. She won because she became stronger inside. And that's something each of us can learn from. Pain doesn't define us. Betrayal doesn't end us. What matters is what we choose next. Maybe you're going through your own quiet battles. Maybe you're learning your own worth again. If so, I hope this story reminds you that you're allowed to rise, rebuild, and protect your peace just like she did. If this touched you in any way, my friend, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps our little community grow, and it tells us you want more stories that speak to the heart. You're not alone. We're right here with you.